Okay, so today we are going to talk about something called function composition. And so as a quick review, we are going to talk about function notation. So for number 1, when you see f of 0, f is your function, 0 is your input. That means x is 0. And so we go to the function f of x, which is graphed here, and go to where x is 0, which is right here. When the input of this function is 0, the output is 8. And so f of 0 equals 8. For number 2, our input is 3, still working with f. So still at this graph, but this time we go to where x is 3, and the output of this function would be -1. So f of 3 equals -1. Now for number 3, we are switching to the function g because it says g of -2. And so we go to where x is -2, and we see that the output is also -2. So g of -2 is -2. G of +2 is 0. Okay, so that's function notation. And now looking at 5, 6, 7, and 8, we see f and g. Whenever you see two functions applied to one input, you have to apply them in the order in which they appear next to the input. Okay, and so here we see a g of 0. We have to figure out g of 0 first. And so I'm going to leave the f parentheses alone right now and just figure out what g of 0 is. So I come over to the g function and look at where g is 0, where x is 0, and I see that the output is 2. And so this problem, f of g of 0, I can replace the g of 0 with a 2. And so now we just need to figure out what f of 2 is. And so in order to do that, we go to the f function over here, and we go to where x is 2, because that's our input. And when x is 2, the output is 0. That's the point 2, 0. And so f of g of 0 is 0. Okay, for f of g of 3, same idea. We have to figure out what g of 3 is first. So we go to our function g and look at where x is 3, and we see the output is 1. So I can replace the entire g of 3 symbol with a 1. And so this problem amounts to figuring out what f of 1 is. And so going to our graph for f, when x is 1, we see the output is 3. And so 3 would be our answer for that problem. For this next one, number 7, we need to figure out what g of 2 is. G of 2 is 0, as we wrote down here. And so this problem amounts to figuring out f of 0, which is 8. I'm going to leave this last one. Let me get my highlighter. I'm going to leave this last one for you to do. Don't forget to check the answer key. Okay? And so that's how you compose two functions. When you apply two functions to a single input, that's called function composition. Now we're going to do the exact same thing, but instead of graphically, we're going to do it algebraically because we don't have the graphs anymore. We have these equations. Okay, and so just a quick review of function notation. If this says f of 0, that means I am plugging in 0 everywhere I see x. So I take this function f and I see that it's going to be x squared minus 6x plus 8. I always recopy the function rule and I put a set of parentheses everywhere I see the variable x, and then I replace the x with whatever input it is. Okay, and so now this says 0 squared, which is 0, minus 6 times 0, which is 0, plus 8. And so f of 0 equals 8. You have to be very careful when you plug in negative numbers like we are here. And so that's why using your parentheses is going to be very helpful. So we're still working with f of x. So the rule for f of x is x, I'm using parentheses, squared minus 6x plus 8. And so everywhere there's parentheses, we're replacing x with negative 2. And so this is why the parentheses are so important, because when you square this negative 2, it becomes a positive 4. And then here, negative 6 times negative 2 is positive 12. And then our plus 8 here. And so 4 plus 12 is 16, plus the 8 gives us 24 for our output. So f of negative 2 equals 24. Now we're switching to the g function, which says x cubed minus 7. And so for our input, we're plugging in negative 2. And negative 2 cubed is negative 8. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive, times another negative 2 makes it negative once again. And so negative 8 minus 7 gives us a negative 15 for our output. All right, so now here we've got the function composition again, because we have two functions together, and so we have to figure out what g of 2 is first. And so g of 2, remember our rule says x cubed minus 7. So x cubed minus 7, and we're putting a 2 there, which is 8 minus 7, which is 1. So this problem is the same as f of, and we just figured out that g of 2 is a 1. And so now we need to figure out f of 1. And so we go to the f function, which is x squared minus 6x plus 8. And we are plugging in 1. 1 squared is just 1. 6 times 1 is just 6. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. Negative 5 plus 8 is 3. And so our final answer for this f of g of 2 is 3. It takes 2 steps. Step 1, step 2. Got to figure out g of 2 first, and then f of whatever that result is. So we're going to do number 5. And so for number 5, this time it says g of f of 1. And so what we're figuring out first is f of 1. So x squared, using our rule, minus 6x plus 8. And then we are putting 1 inside the function. 1 squared is 1 minus 6 plus 8, we actually just did that, is 3. We're not done yet because that's just what we're putting inside the g function. And so now we have to figure out what g of 3 is. And the rule for g says x cubed minus 7. So x cubed minus 7, and we're putting that 3 right here. 3 cubed is 27, minus the 7 is 20. All right, so 2 steps for these composition functions. Now we need to talk about notation. This open circle means composition. It does not mean multiplication. Composition. It says G composed with F. You will see that notation a lot in pre-cal, and so we need to talk about it now. When you see that notation, you rewrite the letters in the same order, and you can use your parentheses. It says the exact same thing. So G of F of 2. So if you put a circle between it, you can rewrite it using the parentheses. And so, let me erase that. This function is the exact same thing as G of F of 2. And so that means we have to figure out what F of 2 is first. And I wonder if we've done that. Nope. And so F of 2, using our rule, x squared minus 6x plus 8. We put the 2 here. Gives us 4 minus 12 plus 8. Gives us negative 8 plus 8, which gives us 0 for our output. I am going to leave these last 2 for you to do and check the answer key.